It is hard to ignore the challenges that we face today in Los Angeles County, right? And the only way we are going to make this a better place to live for all of us is if we actually take ownership of what is happening within our city and within our county.
The destination is on your left, 232 North Grand Avenue.
And in the spirit of being educated and getting involved and understanding how we can make Los Angeles a better place to live for all of us, we are having a conversation with Supervisor Kathryn Barger.
I always say it's not about me, and that's the most uncomfortable thing is getting awards, because I feel like you should do it to do it.
She is representing the largest district in Los Angeles County. Come with us as we have an honest conversation about the challenges, the solutions, and how we can do better for a future. One of my first questions for you is, when I was reading a little bit about your background, what struck me was that you've been doing this for a very long time. You started as an intern in the county. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'm from the area and went to college back east in the Midwest in Ohio. And during the summer, I would come back to California, and I worked for the former supervisor as an intern in his Pasadena field office. And I always tell people that's really where I cut my teeth on public service, because in a field office, you're getting calls from constituents who have concerns, issues, for the most part are unhappy. And my job was to be a case manager, take those calls, and while I couldn't automatically fix it, to make sure that they were heard and that their concerns were investigated. And so I did that for 2 summers and then graduated from college and ended up staying back east. I went to Washington, D.C. for 2 years and actually worked in the private sector, never anticipating that I would work in government again, but was fortunate enough to move back here. I miss my family, I miss my friends, moved back to California, and Supervisor Antonovich had an opening here, and I began my public service then in 1989.
How important do you think that is as we see young people chart out their careers, particularly young women aspiring to have executive offices? How important is it to really have that experience, start from the bottom to, build out the grit to climb the ladder?
I think it's vital. I know that's what really made me who I am today, because I had all aspects of public service, from being constituent referrals, case manager, to policy, which is what I did for Supervisor Antonovich. I did health, mental health, children's services, and welfare. So I got the understanding of those policy decisions that are being made for the county, and then was promoted to chief of staff, and then ultimately was fortunate to be elected. It made me who I am. If I had not started at the bottom, I would not understand the complexities of what this county does. So for me, it's one thing to say I want to start at the top, but if you start at the top, you're going to miss out on really opportunities to be at the top of your game in the job that you do.
Let's be real. It's not easy to hold an executive office, right? You make it look easy, but just the journey itself is very difficult. As a woman, can you talk to us a little bit about, give us some insight as to some things you've learned in the process?
Well, first of all, I'll say that, working with 5 women now on this board, when I started in the county, it was 5 men. And then add 1 woman, but it never was a majority of women, and now the entire board is made up of women. And so what I would say to the young girls and women that want to get into public service and get into executive positions, we've paved the road for you. We have broken the glass ceiling. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, but I can tell you, again, when I started here, not only was the board predominantly all male, but department heads were all male. And now you see department heads that are female, that are given the opportunity. And in part, I think one of the disadvantages that women have had is that when they begin families, they have to take time off, which means when they come back, they're one step behind. So we've tried to make it a level playing field and have been successful in doing that, recognizing and uplifting women. But I tell people that, there is no end to what you can do when you put your mind to it. And don't think that it may look easy and it has its moments, but it's work, it's a job. And if you work hard, I really do believe there is no end to what you can do.
Speaking of the work, dealing with constituents is not easy. Obviously, you've been in field office, so you know the ins and outs of that. But your county, I mean, your district within the county, largest district, it stretches from Kern County to Ventura County, all the way to San Bernardino County, and all the cities in between. How do you manage to really address the issues of the constituents in those areas? Because every region has their own challenges, and every region has their own needs and specific environment and specific culture. Could you talk to us a little bit about how you maneuver that process?
First of all, you just identified why I love the 5th District. It's not a one-size-fits-all. What's right for the San Gabriel Valley is not going to necessarily be what is needed in the Antelope Valley, and what's needed in the San Fernando Valley area, it may not jive with what's going on in the San Gabriel Valley. So it's always a different issue each day, but it's about the team that you have around you. It's about who you hire and how you represent each corner of the district. So I have field offices up in the Antelope Valley, Santa Clarita, in the Universal City area, as well as Pasadena, and then out in San Dimas. So I'm well represented throughout my entire district, and they are the eyes and ears for me of what's going on. Add on to that town councils, which are unpaid, elected in the unincorporated areas to be the voice of individuals in unincorporated areas. Incredible town councils, which also provide input. So it helps me do my job. One person couldn't do it. Even if it were a smaller district, you have to have a good team around you that really does keep you abreast on what's going on. So I've been very fortunate, but you're right. I mean, it is an awesome task, but it's not insurmountable. And with the right people in place, you can represent your district in a way that really does show that you care.
Do you have any secrets in hiring the right person?
Now, I go with my gut, because while you can look at someone and they can be good on paper, it is about the right fit across the board. They may be good on paper at doing something, but we are a family here. I mean, if you think about it, you spend a lot of time with your colleagues, whether you like it or not. And so I always look at the holistic side of it in terms of who that person is and will they fit into this office. Because, you know, I'm not coming from policy. I'll get my own coffee. I'm very capable of you know, staffing myself. And so it's going to take someone that's going to be able to be nimble and work with me, especially when I'm out in the district, and I go out the district quite a bit. So it's not just what's on paper, and that's why I say there's no end to what you can do if you really put your mind to it. I mean, it's important to have a degree, it's important to be well-rounded, but hard work is something that stands out to me. And I love young people that are willing to roll up their sleeves and recognize that it's not a 9-to-5 job. This is not a 9-to-5 job. I'm coming off a weekend where I worked, not complaining. I love it. It was my choice to say yes to the events that I went to. But it's not for the faint at heart. I mean, you have to be ready to roll up your sleeves and get things done. And even though I don't go to every event, I expect my staff to represent, because I think it's important for my communities to know that I'm there for them.
Speaking of communities, there is a large Armenian community in your district, and you have been a proponent of what they care about and have listened very carefully to their needs. Can we talk a little bit about how important that's been in making sure that the diaspora, the Armenian diaspora, feels heard and acknowledged and known? Can we talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I do represent the largest diaspora outside of Armenia. And it has been my privilege, because the diaspora really understands the complexities of what's going on in Armenia and keeps reminding us of the needs, whether it be recognizing the genocide for what it is, or what is going on with the Lakshin corridor right now. And I absolutely believe that because of the fact that I was able to go to Yerevan with a delegation from the ANCA it helped me better understand the connection between the diaspora here and Armenia. And I tell people, up until that point, I always felt it, but I didn't appreciate how deep it goes. And so my trip to Yerevan really opened my eyes about the connection between the people here in my area as well as the people in Armenia, and really giving back and working together.
What did that feel like? What was your impression of Yerevan and the people, and what is it that you noticed that wasn't so apparent?
You know, it's the love of Armenia, and it's the resiliency of the people that fled. I mean, my chief of staff was born in Yerevan and went with me and remembered why they fled, but also had a deep connection still there. Even though she moved at a young age, she still felt that connection to the people there. So I saw that firsthand. And then, of course, the food. I mean, you know, for me, it was incredible, and so it's on my list of places to go again in the not too distant future, because it truly was a treat for me to see Yerevan through the eyes of the ANCA that you know, and my chief of staff who was born there.
Yeah. You know, you helped secure funding for the Armenian Museum. We have been able to recognize April as Armenian History Month, right, in LA County?
Yeah.
And of course, the letter that the county essentially wrote, right, in support of opening of the Latching Corridor. Can you talk a little bit about the significance of that? Because a lot of people would say, this is a county. What can it do? What can it possibly do about global issues, right? What is the significance of a letter like that?
So the Latching Corridor, I think, is an example of while we are a county, we represent over 10 million people. We are larger than many states in the United States, so our voice does matter. And while the issues are in the federal, you know, hands, we can encourage them to address this issue and look at it from a humanitarian crisis and ask that sanctions be made. So we do have a powerful voice, and we have an incredible representative in Adam Schiff, who has been a voice, and I would argue because of the work that he did, the president signed legislation, or I don't even know if it was legislation, but recognized the genocide finally. And that came because I believe that Adam Schiff and this county pushed each year to demand that the U.S. recognize the fact that it was genocide. And to your point, as it relates to, you know, this county and the job that we do, we have to be the voice for those that are not being heard. We are their voice because we have many people living in LA County who have family who are impacted by this. And you have incredible, you know, people working in media that are keeping it front and center. And I think it's important for us to continue to do that. That's why this board, at my request, wrote a letter to the president asking that something be done. And then to your point with the History Month, you know, before I was elected, we always recognized the genocide, always. And one of the things that we wanted to do was recognize the resiliency and the fact that the Armenian people have given so much to this country. So we decided to create Armenian History Month leading up to the recognition of the genocide, because we felt it was important for people to know the contributions of the Armenians that are here, not only in LA County, but in the United States. So that's what we did. We wanted to make it a celebration and then recognize that in spite of the fact that people wanted to exterminate the Armenians, they were resilient, survived, and came back, and have given back in ways that a lot of people don't understand or know. So it was an opportunity for us to educate people.
Thank you for that. That hits deep for personally, as an Armenian, as a woman, as someone who chose a career that is a bit unconventional within my culture. It does take a lot to chart a course for yourself, and having your voice heard is so important. Los Angeles County is an amazing place to live, but it does have its challenges. Can we talk about the obvious issue that the county has been addressing and trying to focus on, which is homelessness? Can we talk about the initiative and where we are and what's happening? Can we give our viewers some updates?
You know, being from Los Angeles County, I remember as a little girl seeing people that were experiencing homelessness on the street. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd get to the place where we are today, where someone's walking down the street and sees someone laying on the sidewalk and walks by and doesn't even think twice. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you would have called 911. Now it becomes a way of life. People have become desensitized to the fact that there are people that are suffering on our streets. I've been proud of the fact that I've continued to sound the alarm. I believe that the voters have self-taxed themselves, and we have a responsibility to be responsible in how that money is spent. The frustration I've had is there's been no data, no accountability. So we continue to put money into a system we don't know if it's working. I would say it has not, because the numbers are going up. And I tell people it's not about housing alone. Housing is not going to get us out of this. It's about mental health, and it's about substance abuse as well. And it's also about accountability across the board. So with this board, we are now, we put together a Blue Ribbon Commission that looked at what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And with the 88 cities now at the table, be it LA City is the largest, all 88 cities are going to have a voice and an opportunity to draw down that Measure H dollars, because as I stated earlier, what may work in the Antelope Valley is not going to be what, let's say, Laverne feels is necessary for their homeless. So we're putting that in play. Also accountability. Accountability begins and stops with us, the board. So now we are going to have, we're putting together a group. I don't know if it's going to be a department or an entity that's going to report directly to the board. I don't care what you call it, but they need to be in charge of making sure that all the moving parts are actually moving in the right direction and working together. Right now, that's not done. And as a result, you've got agencies pointing to the other saying it's their fault, it's their fault. There is no accountability. So I say the buck stops with us. Once this is in place, we will have in real time reports and a better understanding in terms of what is working. We're going to look at camping and look at the encampments that are in place. That's going to be one, the housing, and then mental health and substance abuse. I'm not going to cure homelessness overnight, but I will make you this promise that my goal is to ensure that people that want help get help, and those that don't want help have to be held accountable from the standpoint of public safety, but also quality of life for individuals living in our communities. So if you genuinely want to get off the street, we are going to put together a program that's going to meet your needs. If you choose not to, then you are not going to be able to impact the communities that are begging for us to do more for those that are suffering.
Well, what did the emergency order do? What I mean, obviously there's a lot of governmental processes that, the average person does not understand. Putting the emergency order in place, does that help the process move along a bit faster?
It does. It makes the county more nimble and less bureaucracy, which I would argue shouldn't take an emergency declaration, but the reality is it does. And it allows us to bypass some of the usual protocol that are in place, especially for government, and get things done in real time, especially with human resources. When I look at the fact that mental health, hiring clinicians and all is very difficult because we're competing with the private sector, but the private sector can hire within a month, and it takes the county 12 months. Who do you think that individual is going to go to work for? We need to do it in real time. We need to recognize this is an all-hands-on-deck emergency. We are at a crisis point here in LA County. And by the way, it's not unique just to LA County. It's happening across the United States. But it's important for us to do it now and get it right. And the emergency order allows us to do that.
You know, a lot of people would say, we've been talking about this for a long time. And people tend to judge progress by sight, and because they don't necessarily understand the inner workings of what has to go on in order for things to actually then trickle down to see results. How long do you think something like this takes?
Well, I think, that is the literally $350 million question, because that's how much we get each year in Measure H. But what I will say is, at least in my district, I've worked around the process. So I've implemented things that, quite frankly, there was one point the board would not have endorsed. For example, the host teams, which are pairing law enforcement with clinicians. We self-funded that in the 5th District, recognizing that it is something that has been very, very successful. So I didn't wait for the board to agree to that, because there was not a consensus amongst the board to have law enforcement participate. Even though the host team, these people that are on it, especially law enforcement, are there because they want to be. They don't want to arrest, because you can't arrest your way out of this. They're genuinely there to make a difference. So I worked around the existing bureaucracy, recognizing that for me, it was being responsible to my constituents in the 5th District, and it's been successful. And I work with my cities, and I love the fact that, for example, Pasadena, they are ready to build low-income housing and are ready to draw down funds to the point of where it would probably deplete the entire amount that's available. But they recognize, Pasadena has been an incredible partner. Antelope Valley, contrary to what you hear or see, they have been an incredible partner. We've built affordable housing, we built interim housing, we built emergency shelter. So it's countywide been slow, but in the 5th District, I have been aggressive working with my cities, and where they meet blockades and problems, we've figured out a way to get around it.
That's amazing. Can we talk a little bit about the business owners that tend to be frustrated, partially because of the situation, and also, exasperated by the lingering effects of COVID, right? Can we talk a little bit about them and how you have managed to keep them sort of on track and happy in the 5th District?
Well, we have taken all of our federal ARPA money and really invested it back in the community. And I was back in Washington, D.C., because we just put together a panel, a commission, that I'm going to be vice chair addressing mental health. And one of the comments that was made time and time again was LA County is considered the gold standard as it relates to how we've reinvested our federal dollars, looking at equity, but also looking at the disproportionate impact it's had on certain communities, small businesses especially. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we have provided funding to especially small businesses who have suffered by no fault of their own and need that hands up, because they're 1 month away from closing. And if they can get the financial resources to support them, they will be able to weather the storm. So that's been something that's been very exciting for me. We need to do more. People get back to work, because while we're going to look at hybrid work weeks, maybe 440, 4 days, 40 hours, it's time for people to recognize that it's safe to go back.
Being a woman yourself, working your way up into an executive office, understanding how important it is to have your rights and your rights honored and your voice heard. What do you think about what you've been watching as a woman and what they've been doing and how they've been sacrificing their lives just to have their voice heard?
And getting away with it, which I think is even more frustrating. We live in a society here in the United States where you can stand up and use your voice and protest, and it's a free country. I think that my frustration in watching what's going on in Iran is that we are using our voice here. But again, similar to what's going on in Artsakh, this country needs to stand tall and stand behind, especially people that are recognized as being persecuted. And I would argue in Iran, what we saw happen to women, which I understand the fact that in certain countries, women are required to do things. And I think it's up to that country to change that course. But to kill and put them in prison for using their voice is problematic. And this country, stands on the fact that we have been the voice for the oppressed. And I would argue that we need to continue to do that, and you can do it in a democracy, but in a way that is sensitive to the needs of that country, but at the same time, use your voice and use our power. And when I see the women standing up here saying this is not right and unacceptable, I know it resonates not only amongst people here, but also people in Iran, and it gives that support. And unfortunately, it takes a strong woman. And maybe look at what Rosa Parks did when she took on segregation. It took one woman to really change the trajectory of how segregation is looked at in this country. I would argue that it took the death of someone in Iran to really highlight the need for the women to use their voices, but not just women, the people of Iran to use their voices and stand up and stand tall.
What's a piece of advice you can give to the young people today who may be too far buried into their phones and not paying attention to necessarily global issues or government, local government, and policies and politics, and caring about only what's happening within their own little bubble? What's a piece of advice you have for them?
Well, first of all, do your research. And when you take a position, understand both sides. I tell people, I think what makes me so effective at my job is I listen to both sides. I know my core beliefs, but I'm better at my job because I do listen to those that I may not agree with. And believe it or not, I've come to a place where I've sometimes changed my position based on new information. So what I would say to young people is do your research. If you're going to take a stand or you're going to come down and protest about something, understand what you're protesting about. Don't think that Facebook or Instagram are going to give you both sides of the story. Do your homework. But also understand that taking a position is what's going to create your future. And if you sit back and are on your phone or not engaged, in 20 years you're going to look back and say, how did this happen? And it happened because a vocal minority were able to drive really policy. So it's important to get engaged, be engaged, and use your voice.
Anything else you want to talk about today that we haven't touched?
No, I'm grateful to really be in a position where I can be a voice. And I always tell people I try to be a voice of reason. It doesn't mean I'm perfect, because Lord knows I'm not. But to represent the diverse population here in LA County has been probably the greatest honor that I've had. And when I go back to talk to representatives back in Washington especially, we really do have a lot of clout here. And so when we talk about, what happened in Artstock, when we talk about the fact that we were the voice of recognizing the genocide, it does make a difference. And so to the young people that are watching, I was once young and I used my voice, and I'm here today and able to actually use that in a way that's constructive and is going to make a difference so that their life is better. And I expect them to stand up and do the same for the next generation following them.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you taking the morning to speak with us.
My pleasure.
Kathryn Barger is running for a re-election this year. Check your ballot, do your homework, and no matter who you vote for, be sure to make it to the polls on March 5th. I'm Silva Harapetian. See you next time.